My name is Lisa, and I'm 30 years old. To understand how I got here, we need to go back to when I was just 5 years old. I remember the day my sister Sheila was born. My parents came home from the hospital, and everything changed. "Look at our little angel," my mom cooed, cradling the tiny bundle in her arms. My dad hovered over them both, his face glowing with pride. "She's our joy," he said, gently touching Sheila's cheek. No one seemed to notice me anymore. As the years passed, the pattern only deepened. Sheila was constantly sick, colds, ear infections, fevers that would spike in the middle of the night. My parents were always rushing her to doctors, hovering over her bed, or measuring out medicine with worried expressions. "Lisa, did you leave that window open in Sheila's room?" My mom's voice cut through the house one afternoon when I was 7. I hadn't been in Sheila's room at all that day. This became our normal. If Sheila got sick, it was somehow my fault. If she fell while playing, I should have been watching her better. If she was upset, I must have done something to make her cry. One day when I was 9, Sheila and I were playing in the backyard. She wanted to climb the old oak tree, and I told her it wasn't safe. "I can do it," she insisted, already pulling herself onto the lowest branch. Before I could stop her, she slipped and fell, scraping her knee badly on the rough bark. Her wails brought my parents running. Dad scooped her up while Mom turned on me. "Lisa, how could you let this happen? Why weren't you watching her properly?" But I told her not to climb. "You're her big sister, you're supposed to protect her." That night, after Sheila was bandaged and tucked into bed with extra ice cream and a new stuffed animal to help her feel better, I found my mom in the kitchen. "Mom," I said carefully, "it's not fair. I try to take care of Sheila, but you always blame me when anything happens. Even when it's not my fault." My mother's hand stilled on the dish she was washing. She turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read, somewhere between surprise and irritation. "Life isn't fair, Lisa," she said flatly, "you're older. You need to be responsible and patient. That's just how it is." The conversation was over, I never brought it up again. As Sheila grew older, she gradually stopped getting sick so often. But nothing else changed. She was still their angel, their joy. I was still the one expected to be responsible, to give way, to understand. By high school, I'd perfected the art of invisibility. I got good grades, stayed out of trouble, and asked for as little as possible. When I graduated from college with a degree in graphic design, I started freelancing from my parents' house. Web design suited me, I could work from anywhere, and I didn't need to interact with many people. What I really wanted was space of my own, somewhere quiet and peaceful. My parents had owned a country house for over 15 years. It sat mostly empty, about an hour outside the city, surrounded by trees and a small stream running along the property line. I'd always loved it there. "Mom, Dad," I said one evening at dinner, "I've been thinking. Would you consider letting me rent the country house? I could pay you monthly, and I'd cover all the utilities. It would be perfect for my work." My father exchanged a glance with my mother. "No, Lisa, that won't work." I tried a few more times over the next months, offering more rent, promising improvements to the property. The answer was always the same, a flat, unexplained no. Finally, I realized I needed to make a different plan. I found a cheap apartment in a not great part of town, moved out, and started saving every penny I could. My goal, my own place, somewhere that would truly be mine. The next 8 years passed in a blur of work and saving. I built up my client list, put in long hours, and lived frugally. Meanwhile, Sheila graduated from college with a business degree that our parents had fully paid for. I'd paid my own way through school with scholarships and part-time jobs. By the time I was 30, I'd managed to buy a 3-bedroom apartment with a mortgage. It wasn't my dream home in the countryside, but it was mine, and I'd earned it. I felt proud every time I unlocked my door. Then came the Christmas party that changed everything. My parents hosted as usual, with aunts, uncles, and a few family friends crowded into their house. I brought a bottle of wine and a platter of cookies I'd baked. Sheila arrived late with a guy I'd never seen before, tall, handsome in a generic way, with an expensive watch and a too loud laugh. "Everyone," she announced, "this is Ryan. We've been dating for a few months." After dinner, my father clinked his glass for attention. "We have an announcement to make," he said, beaming. My mother stood beside him, clutching Sheila's hand. "We're giving our country house to our beloved daughter, our angel, who has always made us so proud," my father continued. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The house I'd begged to rent, that they'd refused to even discuss, they were just giving it to Sheila? My mother jumped in. "Sheila and Ryan have been getting serious, and we think they'll be making things official soon." She winked at them. "We're hoping for a grandson before too long. The house will be the perfect family nest for them." The room erupted in congratulations. No one seemed to notice me sitting frozen in my chair. Then my mother turned to me with a bright, artificial smile. "And Lisa, your father, and I haven't forgotten you." She handed me a small, poorly wrapped package. Inside was a coffee maker, a cheap, off-brand one I'd seen on clearance at the discount store. "Thank you," I managed to say, as relatives glanced uncomfortably between my bargain bin gift and the deed to a house my sister was now clutching. I swallowed my hurt and anger. What was the point? Nothing would change. In their eyes, Sheila would always be the angel, and I would always be whatever I was. Not enough, apparently. Then, 8 months later, my phone rang at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. "Lisa, are you there?" My mother's voice was shrill, bordering on hysterical. "Sheila's gone, the house is gone, everything's gone." It took several minutes of her sobbing before I could piece together what had happened. Apparently, Sheila and Ryan had secretly sold the country house, pocketed the money, and disappeared without a word to anyone. My parents had only discovered this when a neighbor called to ask about the new owners. "How could she do this to us?" my mother wailed. $500,000. That's what the new owners said they paid. They got it for a steal. Then came the part one should have expected. "Why didn't you know about this, Lisa? You should be aware of your sister's affairs." I had to hold the phone away from my ear for a moment. "Mom, Sheila is 25 years old. She makes her own decisions, we barely even talk." My father got on the line. "Lisa, you need to help us find her. She could be in trouble." "Dad, I have no idea where she is." "You should be the ones looking for her. She's always been your special angel, right?" "Don't be bitter, Lisa," my mother snapped, apparently having grabbed the phone back. "Sheila was afraid you'd judge her. That's why she didn't tell anyone anything." And there it was, somehow, even with Sheila having sold their precious gift and disappeared with the money, I was still the bad guy in their story. "I have to go," I said, and hung up. I didn't hear from them again on the matter, and I made no effort to reach out. I was worried about Sheila. Of course, she was still my sister, but I also knew that if anything truly bad had happened to her, news would have reached us. And as I told my mother, Sheila was an adult with $500,000 in her pocket. She wasn't exactly helpless. Life went on. I expanded my business, took on 2 employees, and even started dating someone briefly. It didn't work out, but it was nice while it lasted. For those 8 months, I had the most peaceful, normal existence I'd experienced in years. Then came the knock on my door at 6:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was expecting a delivery that day, a new graphics tablet I'd ordered, so I didn't bother checking the peephole. I swung the door open, still in my pajamas, coffee mug in hand. "Good morning, sis." Sheila stood there, looking tanned and slightly thinner than when I'd last seen her. Beside her was Ryan, sporting a new beard and designer sunglasses. At their feet sat 2 enormous suitcases. "Sheila, what are you?" But they were already pushing past me into my apartment, dragging their luggage behind them. "We just got in from Bali," Sheila announced, looking around my living room with a critical eye. "Went straight to Mom and Dad's from the airport, but they said they don't have room. They told us to crash here." I stood by the open door, stunned into silence as Ryan made himself comfortable on my couch and Sheila headed straight for my kitchen. "Got anything to eat?" We're starving, airplane food is the worst. She opened my refrigerator and began rummaging through it. Hey, make us some tea, would you? We're exhausted. I finally found my voice. Sheila, what the hell is going on? She looked up from the container of leftover pasta she was opening. Oh, we ran out of money, had to come back. Mom said you'd put us up until we get back on our feet. I closed the door and pulled out my phone, dialing my mother's number while walking into my bedroom for privacy. She answered on the first ring. Oh, Lisa, isn't it wonderful? Our angel has come home. You should be happy your sister chose to stay with you. I didn't choose anything, you sent them here without even asking me. Well, there's barely room for the 4 of us in our house, she said, as if that settled everything. You have that big 3-bedroom place all to yourself. It makes much more sense for them to stay with you until they get back on their feet. And how long is that supposed to take? Now, Lisa, don't put pressure on them. They're stressed right now, with no jobs and no money. They need time to adjust to being back. I laughed incredulously. Stressed? They spent 8 months traveling the world on $500,000 they got from selling a house you gave them for free. That's all in the past, my mother said dismissively. What matters now is that you take care of your sister. Your father and I can't support her financially right now. And let me be very clear, Lisa, if you kick your sister out, you are no longer our daughter. The familiar ice settled in my stomach, that same feeling I'd had as a child whenever they made it clear that Sheila's needs would always come before mine. Okay, I said flatly, I get you. I hung up and took a deep breath. When I returned to the kitchen, Sheila and Ryan had laid out half the contents of my refrigerator and were eating like they hadn't seen food in days. That night, after they'd claimed my best sheets, used all the hot water, and fallen asleep watching loud TV in their room, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I had a choice to make. I could do what I'd always done, give in, accommodate, make myself smaller to make room for Sheila. Or I could finally stand up for myself. The answer came the next morning when I overheard Sheila on the phone in the kitchen. Yeah, we're staying at Lisa's place now, she was saying to someone, her voice low but not low enough. It's actually pretty nice. We should have a housewarming party this weekend. Celebrate properly, you know? And just like that, my decision was made. I waited until they left the apartment. Sheila mentioned something about meeting friends for lunch, and Ryan tagged along, neither of them bothering to ask if I needed anything while they were out. The moment the door closed behind them, I sprang into action. First, I called a locksmith. Next, I packed their belongings. I called a courier service. I need a package picked up within the hour and delivered across town. I gave them my parents' address. While waiting for the locksmith, I sat down at my computer and logged into my bank accounts. I revoked their access to my credit card. I canceled the automatic payment for their car loan. I blocked their ability to view any of my accounts. When the courier arrived, I handed over the suitcases with a smile. Delivery confirmation, please. I wanted proof they'd received the bags. The locksmith came next, a middle-aged man with kind eyes who didn't ask questions when I requested all new locks. Sometimes you just need a fresh start, was all he said. By 3 o'clock, it was done. New locks installed, belongings gone, financial ties cut. I sat on my couch, my heart hammering. I'd never stood up to my family like this before. It felt terrifying. It felt necessary. It felt long overdue. I picked up my phone and composed a text message to my parents, "Meet your angel at home. I have blocked all your accounts, and I will no longer pay your car loan." Then I turned off my phone and got to work. When I turned my phone back at 6 p.m., I had 37 missed calls and over 50 text messages. My mother, what is wrong with you? My father, call us immediately. I read through a few, then blocked all their numbers. I had work to do, clients waiting for designs, a life that didn't revolve around their drama. That night, around 11 p.m., the pounding started. Sheila and Ryan, clearly drunk, were at my door. Lisa, open up, Sheila's voice, slurred and angry, carried through the hallway. We know you're in there, Ryan shouted, rattling my doorknob. I sat perfectly still in my darkened living room, not moving a muscle. The banging continued until Mrs. Patel from across the hall opened her door. Stop that noise right now or I'm calling the police, she threatened. Mind your own business, lady, Ryan started, but Sheila must have pulled him away. I heard their footsteps retreating down the stairs. The next morning, my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Lisa, it's Aunt Kate. My father's sister. We'd always gotten along well, though we weren't particularly close. Your parents asked me to call you. They're beside themselves. They said you threw Sheila's things out and changed the locks. So I told her everything. The lifetime of being second best. The country house they refused to let me rent but gave to Sheila for free. The financial support I'd been providing while they continued to favor my sister. And finally, the audacity of them sending Sheila and Ryan to live with me without even asking, threatening to disown me if I didn't comply. There was a long silence when I finished. I had no idea, she finally said. Your parents always made it sound like you were the difficult one, and Sheila was the angel. What they did wasn't right. Coming from a family member, those words meant more than I could express. Thank you for saying that. After we hung up, I felt lighter somehow. One person in my family now knew the truth. The calls from unknown numbers continued. Relatives I barely spoke to, friends of my parents, even Sheila's college roommate, all of them pressed into service to make me feel guilty. I stopped answering altogether. Then early Saturday morning, a week after I'd changed the locks, the buzzer to my apartment went off repeatedly. I checked the security camera I'd installed after the late-night pounding incident. My parents and Sheila stood at the entrance to my building, no Ryan in sight. I could have ignored them. Part of me wanted to. But another part knew this confrontation was inevitable, and I was tired of neighbors being disturbed because of my family drama. I buzzed them in. When I opened my apartment door, my mother pushed past me immediately. How could you do this to your own sister? My father followed, his face red with anger. You behaved abominably, Lisa, absolutely shamefully. Sheila came last, tear tracks on her face that somehow didn't quite match her defiant expression. I closed the door and faced them. Say what you came to say, then leave. We raised you better than this, my father began, pacing my living room. Your sister came back, she came to her senses, she's even planning to get married. You should have figured it out yourself that you need to help her. You're ruining their lives. I stared at him, genuinely confused. Help her how, exactly? By giving them a place to live, my mother exclaimed, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. You mean my apartment? I clarified. The one I bought with my own money? The one I pay the mortgage on every month? You have a good income, Sheila piped up. You could buy another place. You should give this apartment to us. I felt a bubble of hysterical laughter rising in my throat. Are you all actually insane? You want me to give you my home? If you really cared about your sister, my father started. No, I cut him off. If you really cared about Sheila, you'd give her your house. You two could downsize, let her live in your place. Why is it always me who has to sacrifice? My mother's face hardened. If you don't change your mind and go back to the way things were, we will disown you, Lisa, I mean it. I looked at the three of them, these people who were supposed to love me unconditionally but had always found me lacking. In that moment, something final shifted inside me. I already gave up on you, I said quietly. I want nothing to do with parasites like you. I walked to the door and held it open. Get out, now. Their anger turned to panic. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Lisa, you can't do this to us. We can't live without you. You're our mainstay in everything. Don't destroy our family. But I stood firm. Get out, I repeated. When the door closed behind them, I leaned against it and slid to the floor, shaking with adrenaline and relief. It was over, finally, truly over. 2 months passed, I threw myself into work, spent more time with friends, and even joined a hiking group that met on weekends. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing for the next crisis call from my family. The silence was strange at first, then peaceful, then healing. I was browsing farmers' market stalls one Saturday morning when someone called my name. I turned to see Aunt Kate waving at me from the tomato display. "Lisa, I was hoping I'd run into you here." We hugged, and she insisted on buying us coffee at a nearby cafe. As we settled at an outdoor table, I noticed she seemed hesitant, weighing her words carefully. "I've seen your parents," she finally said. I nodded, waiting. I wasn't going to make this easier by asking questions. "Sheila's living with them now. The boyfriend, Ryan, he's gone. Apparently, they kicked him out after he started acting like he owned the place. Playing video games all day, eating their food, not looking for work." I took a sip of my coffee, unsurprised. Sheila followed him when they told him to leave, but she came back a week later. Alone. Aunt Kate shook her head. "She's not working. Your parents are supporting her completely." "That sounds about right," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Aunt Kate leaned forward. "They told me it's all your fault. That if you had just let Sheila stay with you and supported her, everything would be fine now." I felt a familiar twinge of guilt, the automatic response I'd been conditioned to feel whenever my parents blamed me for something. But it passed quickly, replaced by a cold clarity. "Of course they did," I said. "They've been blaming me for Sheila's problems since I was 5 years old." "I know that now," Aunt Kate said, patting my hand. "I wanted you to know that not everyone in the family believes them. Some of us see what's been happening all these years." We talked about other things after that: her garden, my business, a movie we'd both seen recently. Normal family conversation. When we parted, she hugged me tightly. "You're doing the right thing, Lisa. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary." As I walked home, I felt lighter than I had in years. I didn't need my parents' approval anymore. I didn't need to be the responsible one, the one who sacrificed, the one who gave and never received. I could just be Lisa. That evening, sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. All those years of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. All those years of believing something was wrong with me because my parents couldn't see my worth. What would my life have been like if I'd cut ties sooner? If I hadn't spent decades trying to please people who were determined to see me as less than? I'd never know, but I could make sure my future wasn't more of the same. My phone buzzed with a text message. One of my hiking group friends was organizing a camping trip for the following weekend. "You in?" the message asked. "Absolutely," I replied without hesitation. 3 months later, I was in my office finishing up a design project when my office phone rang, the line I used only for business. "Hello, this is Lisa." "Lisa, it's Mom, we need to talk." "I don't think we do. Your sister is getting married." I waited for more, but there was just silence on the line. "Congratulations to her," I finally said. "It's to a nice boy this time, someone with a good job. Your father and I are helping them with the wedding." "That's nice." Another long pause. "She wants you to be there." I almost laughed. "Does she? Or do you want me there to keep up appearances?" "This is your sister's wedding, Lisa. Family should be together for important moments." "We're not family anymore," I said quietly. "You made that very clear." "Don't be dramatic, of course we're family." Her voice took on the cajoling tone she'd always used when trying to get me to do something for Sheila. "Your sister needs your help with the planning, she's very stressed. And we thought maybe you could contribute to the costs. Your business is doing so well." And there it was, not an apology, not an acknowledgement of how they'd treated me, just another demand. Another expectation that I would give, while they took and took. "No," I said simply. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no, I won't be at the wedding, I won't help plan it, I won't pay for it, no. After everything we've done for you." I cut her off. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Name one thing. The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. We raised you, she finally said, her voice small. Yes, you did, the bare minimum required by law. And now I'm an adult who gets to choose who I spend my time and money on. I choose not to spend either on people who have consistently treated me as less valuable than my sister. You're being very selfish. I smiled to myself. No, Mom. For the first time in my life, I'm being fair to myself. I hung up and blocked the business line number from my phone. That night, I sat on my balcony again, looking out at the city lights. I thought about Sheila, still living with our parents, still being their angel even as she approached 30. I thought about my parents, still enabling her, still blaming me for problems I hadn't created. I felt no anger anymore, just a distant sadness for what might have been if they'd been capable of loving both their daughters equally. And underneath that, a deep, settled contentment with the life I'd built for myself. I was free of my toxic family, finally breathing easily after decades of carrying their expectations and blame. I took a deep breath of the cool night air and smiled. They would never see me as good enough. And that was perfectly okay.